Welcome back, guys. How you brewing? It's been about 3 weeks since we did our blueberry ale. Last Sunday I went ahead and I checked the gravity. It was come down to the point where I like it. The fermentation was about complete. I checked it again on Wednesday. No change. So we know that our fermentation is done. Give it a couple days to rest. This couple days helps remove some of the byproduct and some of the off taste from the beer. Lets the yeast kind of settle down. After about 2 days, so about Friday morning, Thursday night, I threw the 5 gallons of beer into my refrigerator to do a cold rest, cold crash if you will. What that does is that kind of facilitates the dropping out of all of the byproducts and kind of the leftover yeast material to the bottom, giving you a nice clean beer, nice clear beer. That's really what I look for when I'm doing the homebrew, especially after about 4 years of doing this. It's kind of been my goal to get a nice clear beer that you can see through, especially with these lighter ales. So now we're ready to carbonate. Some people prefer a bottle, but as of late I've been doing some kegging. You get some faster results, faster carbonation, leads to quicker beer drinking. So, without further ado, less yakking, more racking. Let's get started. So, we have our cold crashed beer up here, we have our cleaned and sanitized keg here, and we have our CO2 right here. We're ready to get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up my keg with some CO2, kind of displace some of the air. I'm going to open my CO2 here. I'm going to let some of the CO2 in. This is going to help me check for leaks, some pressure leaks. It's going to help get this cap set right. The other thing is that the CO2 is going to sink to the bottom, drive out some of the air. So I'm going to let this fill for a second. Going to stop it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let some of that out. The hopes is that the air that's sitting at the top of the keg here is going to come out. This is called purging your keg. A little bit more CO2. Purge again. And finally just a little bit more. And I'm going to let all this out. Sorry, I'm going to let all of this out. Guys, little pointer. If you ever want to avoid a conversation when you're kegging beer, all you simply have to do is start closing this. And you can close it so you didn't hear what they moved and went. So, if you remember last time, we didn't add our blueberry flavoring yet. We were waiting to do that till after the fermentation stage. That's where this is now. I'm going to add 2 ounces of blueberry extract into the bottom of the keg. And when I start filling, I'm just going to kind of swirl it around to get it to mix just a little bit. So you guys, you're going to think that you're not putting enough in. Let me tell you, this stuff smells like blueberry cough syrup. It's very strong. 2 ounces is going to be plenty. Now I'm going to take my transfer tube, which I sanitized. I'm going to run this into my keg here, get it all the way down at the bottom, and try to avoid as much air getting in there as possible as far as disturbing it. Actually, looking down here, I can actually see a cloud of CO2, similar to what you can see coming off the dry ice. So we got a lot of the air out of there. Hook this up here. And we're going to start the flow of our fermented beer here. Adjusting the flow here. Try to get as much air out as possible. We don't want a whole lot of turbulence, as that's going to throw some off flavors into the beer. I'm swirling and swirling. The goal here is to mix that blueberry flavor up a little bit, and that should be plenty. Now you can sit back, relax, and enjoy some homebrew while this is transferring. nice. You saw me shut that off. Still a little bit of beer in that bucket, but at that point we're starting to mix some of the trub, some of the waste product at the bottom of that barrel. If I tip it forward, some of that's going to come down into the keg, and I really don't want to do that. Going back to the first video, that's why I brewed to about a 5.5 gallon batch. Right now this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and seal this off. And anything that's in that tube can go ahead and drip right back in. Now it's time to seal and carbonate our keg. Take a quick dunk here around the gasket. Our sanitizer. We kind of put this into place, but I'm not going to close it off just yet. Kind of hold it here. Going to connect our CO2 again. I'm going to pressurize this to 30 psi. This is part of a burst carbonation, which I'll discuss here at the end of the video. That's what I like to do for a quick burst, similar to what you do with the soda stream. Again, I'll go into a little more detail here in a second. Starting carbonation. Right now, this keg is not locked. Right now, the pressure from the tank is holding it in place. Now it's locked. What that's really good to do is it helps make sure you get a good seal and you're not going to leak CO2 and no oxygen is going to leak in. You're not going to end up with flat, skunky beer. Our tank is up to pressure here at 30. I'm going to go ahead and shut it off and disconnect. And put our keg in the fridge here. Put our keg in the kegerator. Get it nice and cold, and it'll keep carbonating in here. Sorry, Sam. Last thing, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of a label, a little bit of a sticker. Don't really mean anything other than that's how many kegs they've held. This one is for Cleveland's Balloon Fest 1986. If you don't know anything about that, go ahead and look it up. It's such a Cleveland story, such a Cleveland tragedy. Put our tank back in. Reconnect. Okay, listening for any leaks. Not hearing any, we're going to go ahead. Turn our tank back on. And let the gas flow through to keep our tank at a constant 30 psi. That's the kegging process. So now that we're carbonating, I'm going to clean up here a little bit, come back for some final thoughts. So that's the process, guys. We've got our fully fermented beer. We're now carbonating. Let's talk a little bit about carbonation. So I went ahead and I filled my keg up with about 30 psi of beer. I'm going to let that sit overnight till about midday. I mentioned that this is kind of like your soda stream. So what the burst carbonation process is hitting your liquid with a lot of carbonation, a lot of pressure really fast in hopes that it's going to absorb it very quickly. And it does for the most part. I only keep it to this for about overnight to maybe 12 hours. The reason for that is you do start to risk over-carbonating your beer, which could be just as bad as under-carbonating your beer. I did do my first batch of kegging at about a 24-hour at that high pressure, and I did get some over-carbonation, some very foamy, and it took a while for the foam to settle down. It did kind of get a little bit of an acid flavor to the beer, but not too bad, so that's why I've reduced it. After overnight, 12 hours, I'm going to go ahead and take it down to about serving temperature, serving pressure, which for a beer like this is about 10 to 12 psi at the temperature I have it. It may actually go a little low because it's easier to put more carbonation into it than it is to take carbonation out of it. I mentioned earlier that one of my goals is to get a really nice clear beer, and before I kegged I did pull off a sample of this cold crashed beer. I'll show you right here. So you can see, you can see my ugly mug through this. When I was doing my bottling, when I was doing my non-cold crash just straight from bucket to final container, I was definitely getting cloudy beer. A lot of that comes with the process, a lot of that comes with time. So some of the things I did to help that, I did cold crash the beer. And if you go back to that first video, I did add my Irish moss. I was also very careful with how much of the bottom debris I was transferring over from the wort pot over to the fermenter. It's really nice when you have company over. You can pour them a beer that it looks like something they get out of a tap at their local bar. It's a matter of preference. It's one of the things I look for in a beer. Now let's talk final product. I could really smell the blueberry in this beer. This is definitely going to be a nice summer beer. I know I'm making this in the middle of December. Y'all saw Santa hanging out on my fridge over there. I'm recording this about a week before Christmas, and you know that flavor is going to be really great in the summer. It's going to be really reminiscent, but I also think it's going to be kind of nice sitting there in winter drinking something that reminds you of summer. So a lot of people ask, well, what's your alcohol content? How does it compare to that of what I buy in the store? So I went ahead and I have our original gravity. You can take a look up at the screen over here. And you're going to see that our original gravity was about 1.051, a little higher than what the recipe called for. Remember, I did add an extra pound of dry malt extract to kind of balance out my ABV with the increased volume. And our final gravity was 1.01, which was right on the dot with what we expected from the recipe. And that puts our total alcohol by volume to be right about 5.3, 5.4%, similar to that of what you drink. It's a little bit lighter than what I do in the winter. I usually go a little bit stronger in the winter. That Christmas ale you guys saw me drinking is about 10%. That's the highest I do. I usually aim in the winter, I aim for about 7 to 8% and drink a smaller glass. In the summer, I actually aim a little lighter. I do a Kolsch that I like to keep right around 4%. So this is right in between, a nice balanced beer. Well, I'm going to let this carbonate for a couple days. I'm going to pour a couple glasses off of there, and then I'll come back for the taste test, guys. That'll be part 3 of our video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've really enjoyed making these videos. If there's anything you want to see, let me know down in the comments. If you've liked what you've seen, like the video, subscribe for future updates. If there's anything, any questions you have about the why I did things, you want to call me out for, Chuck, you clearly made a mistake here, do it down in the comments. I'm open to learning, I'm open to teaching. But until next time, thank you guys for watching.